Hello and welcome to WooStream, bringing Willamette and Pnca to you. My name is Tiffany Newton and I'm the Director of Alumni and Parent Engagement for both Willamette University and Pnca, the Pacific Northwest College of Art. Today's conversation features Stacey Anaya and CJ Cox. Stacey Anaya graduated from Pnca in 2005 with a BFA in graphic design. She has over 18 years of agency and in-house art direction and brand design experience, having spent the majority of her career at some of the largest footwear and apparel brands in the world. She has an extensive understanding of creative go-to-market needs. Currently, she is the Director of Global DTC Design and Production at Keen Footwear, focusing on all things digital. CJ Cox just received his BFA in 2021 and focuses on graphic design alongside illustration. Originally from Jamaica, CJ draws inspiration from contemporary and sci-fi graphic styles alongside the research-heavy aspect of his ideation. Check out CJ's Thesis exhibition here. And by here, I'll put a link, as we get talking so that you can see his wonderful thesis stuff and his website. Our discussion today will focus on the experiences of these two alumni as they went through the Pnca thesis process, as well as Focus Week, while also setting the stage for what our community can expect next week as we support our soon-to-be graduates of the class of 2022 as they launch their creative careers in this increasingly complex lived reality. Stacey and CJ, thank you so much for joining me this evening. We can't wait to hear all about your experiences.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no problem.
So I will start with Stacey and then CJ just a little bit. If you could tell me a little bit about what brought you to Pnca, why this area, and then we'll get more into your specific experiences around the thesis process and Focus Week.
Sure. So I actually had a little bit of an untraditional path to attending Pnca. I'm a native Oregonian, potentially a little bit rare, but I had known about Pnca from my high school art class days. There was a poster of a high school summer art intensive for Pnca that I always wanted to attend, but I did not have the opportunity to. But at the time, I decided I was going to go to one of the big in-house state universities instead. Almost immediately decided that was not the right decision. So when I got there, the design program was just kind of lacking. But hardly any of the teachers were actually practicing anymore. They didn't feel very connected to the design community. And I just felt the sense that I wasn't going to get the graphic design education I was looking for. So I decided to transfer to Pnca and come back to Portland. So one of the best moves I've made. And I really found that the specialized focus and the practice and the connections that the faculty had to the Portland design world gave me a huge step up. I honestly don't think I would have had the career path that I have had if I had not had come to Pnca.
Thank you for that. Now, CJ, what about you?
My introduction to Pnca was not as eventful, but somewhat similar. It's not very normal that this happens. Previously, I was in Memphis at Memphis College of Art, and then there was a emergency transfer fair because things were kind of out of disarray. Long story short, things had to be shut down, so we had to get all the students out. After going through a few schools here and there, Pnca really caught my eye. I just decided to take the plunge into a new state. I will say they didn't tell me it would be raining a lot, but they did tell me the weather was pretty nice. Feel a little bit slighted, but no issue. I got my learning.
Brilliant marketing. It never rains in the Pacific Northwest. But I'm so glad you stuck it out and forgave us for not fully disclosing the amount of rainy days here. So Stacey, back to you. Can you tell me a little bit about how the thesis process worked when you were at Pnca?
I can. I had to dig deep a little bit because it's been quite a while, but from what I recall, it spanned our entire senior year. And it was the proposal and the writing and all of the reviews around that. And then it culminated in a presentation, presenting your thesis to a panel around what I assume would now be called Focus Week. We just didn't have that terminology at the time. And you were also given a physical space that you had to visually bring your thesis to life in a senior thesis exhibition style. And that was open to the public for a few weeks around the graduation timeframe.
Now, going through that process can be a little bit terrifying, but also clarifying, hopefully. Did it really tease out anything for you or kind of help anything gel since it was kind of a culminating experience for your education?
Yeah, I was already very interested in pursuing a print kind of based traditional commercial graphic design career. And I think it really helped reaffirm that that was the right direction I was heading in. Back then we were also required to do an internship, and I was fortunate that I was actually hired at the company that I interned in between junior and senior year. And I started working like a week before senior year started. So I was working on my thesis and working, and I almost think they kind of played off of each other in a way that I was able to use some of my like learnings from very entry professional practice into my thesis, but it really, they played off of each other and really helped confirm that that's what I wanted to do.
Well, and you kind of teased out my next question already a little bit into how this was practical in your early career launch. And so it sounds like you were able to do some on-the-job exploration while delving into your thesis and then have taken that forward. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It taught me a lot about project management, self-management with your time, how to manage something from concept to completion, how to hit deadlines, even if you're not ready, how to receive critical feedback. Design is so subjective, but being able to receive feedback is a skill that's crucial to making it in this world. And honestly, those are things that I still use every day in my practice 18 years later.
Well, and it seems like it's also such a great level of exposure to a lot of different experts as well, both, where you were working, but then also the faculty that you were working directly with, but then other community members who were able to participate, review your work, and provide feedback.
Absolutely. Yes.
I just love that. Now, CJ, moving on to you, you were able to attend Pnca a few years later than Stacey. Can you go into what your experience was like doing the thesis and focus week process?
That one, even to this day, I'm still sort of like in a mixed bag. I will say it was at first nerve-wracking, but I can't forget emotions such as it being exciting and a little bit overwhelming. I think because everything was virtual, it was a very weird section of time. I was used to going to these focus week and seeing these upperclassmen finish these thesis projects that are massive books and all this sorts, and being inspired, but also very fearful. But after spending basically a year on my own project for thesis and then reaching the due date, all that fear sort of kind of melts away. You spend enough time to know that this is something you want to do. And if you've put enough heart, which more than likely you probably have, then it's okay. Relief afterwards, and then you can go see all your companions and friends and all their theses.
Now, yours was, just a few months ago, so it's a very visceral, recent experience. Could you tell us a little bit about your topic and what you delved into?
To break it down to one word, I would say community. But to expand a little bit, I think the best way to explain it would be a version of creating a community through an online space using a podcast for the medium. I wanted to create a space that would help bring together people of color in the design world, or also in the art world in general, whether it be just through issues that we've faced all together or solutions that we've yet to learn, both from the level of a well-esteemed designer to someone who's just starting in the design community.
That's really interesting. So it was trying to find a non-physical manifestation of space to hold it and then to create narrative and connection out of that. So how did it all come together? I mean, I know you said it was a little overwhelming, fearful, and then at a certain point you're just like, I'm over it, we've got to go. But how did that all come together and play out for you?
It was a ride and a half. It was one of those moments where you kind of realized there was a lot you had to learn. And being a designer, you pick up quickly that you have to be very multifaceted. You have to learn many different pieces to make yourself at least marketable in certain situations. But when it came to creating a podcast, especially by yourself and trying to follow through, creating connections with established designers, people you have no connection to, people you think are out of your league, those you look up towards. Of course, marketing yourself, making social media posts and sending emails, connecting with not only professors, but people around your community, and then trying to keep a calm level head when facing those you'd say are, I wouldn't say challenges, I'd say peers I've yet to meet, such as one of my episodes, or the first episode rather, being Fran Bittakis, who created Juke Juke. That was very awe-inspiring and eye-opening, but also paralyzing. Just being able to speak to this person who I look up towards and seeing them come in for talks themselves and being so busy and having the moment to reflect on not only my life, but hearing about their life as well and finding weird connections that we have that I would never think of because, again, this is someone I look up towards. I'd never think they had the same issues that I'd have.
Well, and what a great way to kind of flatten any perceived hierarchies. You know, at some point, someone's giving you permission to interview with them, be in a peer space with them, and go through things. And then you just get over yourself, get over some of your preconceived notions in yourself and get to dive in and dig into the topics at hand or what you want to discuss, just like we're doing this evening. So I just want to think about both of you. It seems like there were also a lot of transferable concrete skills that came out of this that weren't just about the creative idea, but really the process and the branding, the marketing, the business aspects, the other things that you need to know. Are there a few that really stand out to you that, are now in your toolbox?
I think the first is just try something. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of fear when it comes to doing something new. I've just recently been able to get over that feeling. Just creating a podcast is hard. You have to learn sound design. You have to learn public speaking. You have to learn how to address other people, both formally and informally, and then intertwine both of those in a conversation. Just being able to tell yourself that I'm going to try this thing out. I'm going to try creating a new style, or I'm going to make a new medium, or I'm just going to do a new thing that doesn't even pertain to graphic design. Just try it, follow through, and whatever the end result is, take a lesson from that and keep going. I mean, besides that, I would say time management is also a great asset. In the past, I personally suffered from making plans and then completely just tossing everything out the window because of emotions or stress. But now I've learned to not only make a basically like timeline for what I need to do things, but also fit in, yes, this is a stressful time. This day and that day is going to be clear. This day and that day is going to have a lot more work, et cetera, et cetera. Like being able to pace yourself and know how you work.
And Stacey, you had mentioned a few that came up, project management and some other things, but was there anything else that you kind of pull out day to day that resonates for you?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of things that CJ was talking about. I think one of the key takeaways was not being too precious about your first idea or your first concept. I mean, a lot of times we think it's like, this is it, this is great, the rest is going to be smooth sailing. But getting that feedback and working it more and continuing to develop it, usually the end result is always so much better than where you started. And so having faith in that process and being able to kind of take a bigger step back and just really dig into it more, I think was something I learned a lot. A work back schedule is something that I still use incredibly often, that, here's the due date, back it up, like all these little chunks and parts for how you're going to get it done. That was something that was first introduced to me at school and is something that is still in the vernacular and used all the time in my practice. So, and I would say collaboration. Collaboration is probably one of the other big things. Although the thesis is a personal project, there was a lot of stressful times where you wanted to commiserate with some of your fellow students, but also get feedback and be able to improve your project by seeing an outside perspective. Sometimes you're just so close to it, right? You can't see what's right in front of you. And so being able to also even look at somebody else's work is sometimes inspiring, or getting some fresh ideas for you. So I think collaboration and not trying to do everything by yourself also was a good tool.
And it seems like it blends a few things, like being able to cultivate a maturity about your work so that you don't take everything so personally that you can't be open to critique or seeing how other people approach the work, those kinds of things. Then there's the community aspect. Other students and faculty are trying to provide supportive feedback. I mean, still critical in some ways, but supportive feedback in a, open space that is not as harsh maybe as the commercial world can be at times. And then from that, you kind of have a polished piece of work that you can then translate, hopefully, into your career search once you've launched. And Stacey, I'm so sorry, we forgot to ask, do you remember what your thesis was about? That sounds terrible.
No, I do. I do not remember my official proposal anymore, but so it was called Seen While Being Seen. And it was about the Jefferson Dancer Elite High School dance program in Portland. And it was all about the incredible things that these students learn by participating in this city-funded art program. And so I created a book about it, and I took all the photography and followed these students for a year about what skills they were learning by having this art available to them, and not just a dance skill, but, the confidence and the being on time to something and being responsible for something. And it was fun.
Well, and what a great way to use your skills to also share other narratives and stories of people that are being affected by the art community in a positive way. And that's something that I've learned about Pnca coming from Willamette, working with lawyers and business folks. I just had not realized how impactful and community oriented a lot of these projects are. I know, CJ, you were talking about creating a space for people of color, artists of color to talk about their experiences. Stacey, you're talking about community arts programs and what comes out of that and how that helps folks both improve themselves and then be better community members. It sounds really exciting and kind of teases through a lot of different ways. Yeah. So I have all the questions. So as we keep going, are there things that you think could have been improved on, or that now that you've had a little bit of time, a different rate for both of you to think about it, that might have been helpful? Or when you think of maybe going into the room and watching students who are now doing their projects, how you might approach it now that you're on this side of it?
It has been... Sorry, you go first. Yours is, okay. You remember more than I will.
All right. I think the first thing I would say is I would agree collaboration, going back to that point. I think one thing I stress over a lot is fine details. I'm a perfectionist, so I love when my idea that comes to life is exactly as how I see it in my mind. But that did put a lot of weight on my back. I think it also made me almost clock out for Focus Week. There was a moment where I just said, you know what, I could just miss Focus Week and just do it. And I have another semester. I'm off semester. It's fine. But being able to collaborate and meet with not only my mentor, but other people and say, hey, look, I have all this stuff. Could you just check it out? What's your taste? What do you love? Friends. And those are just saying, I just want your attention. I just want your information. And even if it's not looking for feedback, being able to not pride yourself on doing everything and to humble yourself and just try to outsource a little bit. If you have a friend who can do really nice photos, then find your photography friend. If you have someone who is insane with illustration, collaborate. Maybe give them $20, $50 for a good job, just creating that small sense of connections with just that one project.
And it seems like also those are relationships and skill sets and folks that you can then draw on later and be like, hey, do you, either you or do you know someone that's a great photographer, or hey, do you find, Stacey, that you kind of still reach back into your connections and
oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think connections are key. I can't tell you how many times we've hired somebody because somebody knew somebody and they had worked with them before, or you knew they could be trusted. Or I think maintaining those relationships, even I still know several design students that I was in school with, that I think maintaining those relationships will only get you further.
No, yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. I think even now I still have friends who are just about to finish their thesis, and wherever I can help, where they ask advice and say, how do I write my proposal? How do I defend? I just give as much as advice as I can from my own experiences, as well as entertaining the very numerous theses before my own.
And I think sharing it as someone who does not come from a creative background or an artistic background, I think not enough credit is given to the varied skill set that you need to both be a creator and a creative worker, and have that aesthetic in a variety of different mediums, however, you focused on that. But then to have some business skills, some legal skills, some knowledge of intellectual property, some knowledge of, community networking and working on relationships to then, capitalize on visibility and branding and marketing and all these different things. I don't think enough credit is given, where people sometimes have a classic understanding that art school is about learning to paint or learning, a specific medium or style of art, and not really understanding that now folks are like literally self-branding powerhouses that have to be able to navigate social media and all these different things. Are you finding that, CJ, that you're kind of translating that for other folks?
Yeah. I think I've reached that point where my mind has broken free of just I'm in school and moved along to I am now someone who is open for work. I can do X, Y, and Z. But going back to even before I finished school, back junior days, I started seeing like these small nuances of, oh, hey, this person's an illustration, but then you check their Instagram out and it has like, entire branding. They have an Etsy page of everything. And then you look at your friend in graphic design, it's like, oh, well, I'll check their stuff out. They have like an entire website. They've already started modeling and some other branding. And there's so many smaller pieces that you need to fit together to make the whole, that it's missed a lot of times. It's missed a lot of times, especially when it comes to small projects. For example, a flyer. Someone thinks a flyer is just made by putting a few graphics together. Just get an artist to do it for you, pay them however much, and you're good. But in truth, there's a lot of things like layout. You need to also focus a lot on the text and the tone, what you want the viewer to notice, what you want it to see, imagery. You might even need a second voice on that. And there's all these like moving pieces that will then create this flyer.
And then even how much do you charge for it? What are your billing terms?
Yeah.
How are you going to accept that payment? Yeah, it's a whole other business side of how do you actually make it profitable for you also, I think is something that they're starting to finally teach, but it was a hard learning curve for a lot of us as well. Even public speaking, like pitching your concept and pitching your thesis. I think we were fortunate to have one, public speaking class during thesis thing, but I think all of that, in general, most people are not the most comfortable with public speaking, but especially in project-based world, it really helps to be able to sell your ideas and be confident in it. And I remember it kind of being terrifying having to present my thesis to a panel. And I wish I had done more practice on my friends or just in front of family or whatever to get more comfortable with that. But I think it's all those skills that you have to learn. It's not just about making a pretty picture on the computer.
Yeah. I mean, even going back to public speaking, I recently had someone ask me, like, how do I articulate myself well in front of people? And the idea is you don't. You just have to go up there and say it and just have this confidence that you need to just put out there. With the main thing when it comes to public speaking is being able to articulate yourself, smiling, and at least looking like you know what you're saying. And from there on out, it's smooth sailing.
I will say, coming from the public relations and social work background, that was my educational training. It very much was like, fake it until you make it. Just, throw yourself out there. It doesn't matter if your first attempt is woefully inept. You have to, like you said, you have to try, you have to make the attempt, you have to keep going. And I love, Stacey, that you have just keep making a bit. Like it's an ever evolving process of learning what to do, what not to do, throwing something out the window, moving on. Hopefully there's not a lot of video evidence of whatever my first speech is for. There's some things that people have saved where I'm like, oh, can we just not remember what that was? But it's all a creative practice to cultivate yourself, to cultivate your tools, to cultivate the unique vision and perspective that you're bringing to the world, and that you are then charging people to benefit from. I mean, it takes so much work to even just put a flyer together. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, I could just pull up a template from Word, without realizing all of the training and skills and the nuance that you both would bring to a design project that Word cannot offer you in a simple template. Do you find that you have to, again, like, tell people sometimes why that's important? Or now that there's a lot more content creators, or there's a lot more, micro business owners on Etsy or in different states, like, do you think that, and maker spaces have taken off, do you think there's more societal awareness, or is that still a conversation that needs to continue and that people are still bringing forward?
I would say it's a healthy 50-50. I would say between the last 5 years, starting in design and now ending that process of actually becoming a designer, I've gotten a lot less questions on, or at least I've had a lot of instances where I need to say, yes, I can do this. However, I just want you to know that this process would be better because what you're asking right now is just overcomplicating it. But right now I'm getting more questions on like legality of like design styles and like what would be copyrighted versus what would be okay. Which honestly, that has opened an even bigger avenue for me to check out, like being able to tell my client, like, yes, this legally will be fine. You don't have to worry. And this is my work. Our contract says that you will have full rights, so you don't have to worry about royalties or anything versus the usual. So does Times New Roman sound okay? That sounds okay, right? Like,
At least they're not talking about papyrus. I remember many horrible PowerPoints with papyrus in 7th grade or whenever that was.
And a great Saturday Night Live skit about it. But I also think there's slightly some danger to it that there's so many people are so good now with the internet and all of these sites that there's somebody who can do it for super cheap, and design is very accessible now for a lot of people. And, it's beyond the Word templates, but like there are many marketplaces now where people can get access to these things. So sometimes having to justify like why it's worth having a customized project for you, or something that's not just a, change the name and a logo that's already made. Sometimes you do have to sell the benefit that way, like, why does it cost this much? And why is it better to do this than just, a mass design system?
Well, and sometimes that consultative role where you're, a topical expert and a consultant for a client, as well as someone that is producing the creative content itself. Mm-hmm. And trying to talk through that. And you wouldn't have thought that, intellectual property and legalese and contract writing and drafting would have been a big thing. And I can think of our poor law students over at Willamette who are in, contract and tort classes and being tortured, but yet that may not be the gist of the majority of your training in school, but you still need to know enough to protect yourself and your work and creative endeavors, but also be mindful of your client's needs and what's appropriate. Oh my goodness, that has to have been so fun. I mean, is that a class that you took, or was that something that was more on the job or situational as you were going?
No class. Personally, for me, it was, I would be conversing with a client and then the question would pop up. I'd go, oh, and then straight to Google. Let's see what information I can get before I send anything, because I don't want to say anything that might make it either more frustrating or, like, again, you have to sell yourself. So I can't go, I don't know. I have to get at least a little bit of something. I will say I'm not the best on this. However, this is what I know. And that way it can bridge that little gap.
Yeah, it was also not a dedicated class. When I was there, we definitely spoke about it. But I think it's an area of opportunity for sure. Even things like if you're a freelancer, taxes. Nobody talks about like the big portion of like a self-employed tax for trying to do freelance work for design, which is a great avenue for a lot of people who are just graduating. But, it's a lot of the real world stuff that they don't really talk about or nobody wants to deal with. But it's the copywriting, I feel like it was definitely touched on because that's a big portion, has always been of design. But I think contracts for sure, all the other freelance stuff definitely are, I feel like, starting to be covered a lot more because there are so many people who are running their own kind of brands and shops now that you kind of have to know it all. And you're expected to be kind of, as you were alluding to earlier, almost like a Swiss Army knife designer where like, I can do motion and illustration and website and design and everything you need for this price. And here's it's all typed up in this pretty picture. So it's the business side of it is one that I think is ever evolving and is always good to arm the students with that information if possible.
I think that's an area of growth. Of course, we haven't been able to introduce the new dean, Jen Cole, just yet. But she's on campus, she's moving in the next month, and we're really looking forward to some of the things that she'll be bringing to Pnca. But one of the things I just got to spend a few days with her in a kind of a planning retreat that she's talking about is experiential classes around entrepreneurship. So covering small business skills, taxation, all those different things to kind of help students have the skills, because it's something like 40 to 50% of people who leave a creative education go into having either as a side gig or as their primary form of employment, kind of being a one-person shop or in a very small shop that you then, like you said, have to be a Swiss Army knife and at least know enough to know what you don't know and go research it, CJ, go find that out and make sure that you're in a good position and can move on with that. And I know we've got about 25 minutes left. So before we switch over into the Q&A with everyone else, and for those who've joined us, please feel free to drop in your questions in the chat or the Q&A feature. Are there things that we didn't touch on when we just come into thinking about your, capstone thesis project kind of experiences at Pnca or how that's been infused into your post-graduation life?
I think that one of the main things that we don't tend to talk about much, or at least often, is rest. I advise all of my friends and all those who are about to finish their theses to rest. Take a week or a month, or summer is coming up, sleep for half of that, and then go party for the other half. It's so crucial. And I forgot to do that myself. I was just working hard day in, day out, learning new skills to then finish this thing as a one-man army. And after all was said and done, once I finally dropped my shoulders, I had to go do things like going to hospitals and clinics and stuff and finding out all these different ailments that all happened because of the level of stress I was taking on, and I was telling myself, I can do it. I'm not going to cry. I'm just going to head through it, headstrong. Let's get it done. And now after finally saying, you know what, I don't need to push myself that hard and I can take days off. I don't need to work 12 hours on the weekend. I'm feeling much better.
Work-life balance is key for sure. Burnout is scary. That's for sure. And you had the added pressure of having to do it all online. So I'm sure that was immensely stressful. I recall it being a wonderful but stressful time as well. I would do it all over again. I would just say for anyone who is in this situation, like, congratulations. And now the real world fun begins, because it is actually a lot of fun. Like, once you get past, you've had this incredible accomplishment, and now you get to go kind of pave your own destiny about what you want the next chapter to look like. So
I mean, being able to say you're done with school and now speaking to one or two like firms or clients, and then just clicking right off the bat, getting comments like, oh, I love your energy, or your designs are great. You can just feel accomplished that, yes, I just toiled away for the last few years and it's paying off now.
Yeah, there are definitely those moments when I think of my own thesis where you're like, oh, the dark circles were all over like my caffeine addiction and everything that was required to get through to the end here was all worth it, but hopefully not, at the expense of your long-term health. But it is also interesting that, living in a capitalist society, there is that real drive to, the value is always on the productivity side, and we don't always value the rest and kind of giving yourself the opportunity to refresh so that then you can go be your most productive and not end up, needing to go to a clinic and take care of yourself. What I will say before, so we have a couple of questions coming in, where I'm realizing that I didn't explain what the thesis or focus week process was. So, just in case you've never heard of Pnca or any of this, for those who are online, the thesis process is a year-long process for those who are about to graduate from Pnca. You have to draft up an original idea of what you think a kind of a culminating artistic project will be for you, defend it or present a proposal in the first semester of the year. And sometimes folks are kind of a spring-fall versus a fall-spring. So, it rotates. But share that, get feedback from your advisor, from other members of the faculty, as well as your peers, and then refine that idea and work towards being able to then present your final project in the second semester. That is something where, and I'll send an email out to everyone because it won't let me drop it in an attachment, but we have a whole list of like the 40 plus different projects. It's actually more than that. I think it's about 50 or so different projects that are being defended this time, as well as proposals from all of those who will be ready to defend in the fall. And some of the titles of these are wonderful, where it's everything from, Snow Mom, which is an animated short about a boy and their father dealing with grief, to I saw someone who did things about helping families who experience the wildfires, having survival kits and things. And so it can be anything from, traditional creative arts that we would think about to combining arts with societal needs around supporting people with PTSD or complex trauma. There's a whole range, but it's really exciting. And then Focus Week is kind of when everything comes together. There's food, there's chaos. You get to go see all of these things up in, rooms in different galleries and exhibition spaces. And then you have 4 hours to take it down and put it back, to put the next students up. So it's really a beehive of creativity and wonderful stuff to see if you get a chance next week. So in looking at the questions, now that I'm pivoting a little, did either of you find that the thesis process was a bonding experience with other students and or advisors?
Yeah. Yes, it was a bonding experience. I personally, I'm someone who tends to work alone. And usually when I start working, I am just in there. There's no way you can get me out unless I'm starving. So I would always tend to block out any distractions, which would include both classmates and professors. Okay. But after starting thesis and really getting into it, again, the importance of connection, being able to reach out towards professors, not only my mentor, but other professors in the same area and also in adjacent areas like illustration and so on, and just getting feedback as to what I need to do first and what I need to do next and how did they handle things, quickly turn things around. I mean, even down to this day, I still will show up on campus just to check things out or just like collect something. And I'll get the, oh, hey, CJ, it's been a while. Just have a quick conversation that feels really refreshing.
Yes, absolutely. My class was pretty small at the time. I think there was 12 of us, designers who were graduating. So a pretty tight-knit group, having spent many years together. And I think they're the only ones who know what you're going through. So you really kind of rely on each other for the gripes and the successes and the I'm so tired, but I think, yeah, it's a great camaraderie of the other students who are with you. And I remember the faculty being really great during that time too. And also really trying to help prep us for what was going to come next beyond the thesis, right? Like this is one thing you're working on right now, but like, what do you want to do next year, and kind of have the eye on the farther prize too. So I think that was kind of a bonding time during that last senior year as well. That was really special.
Oh, I do want to add one more thing. I also have to say I agree 100% when it comes to students and faculty. I mean, if it wasn't for the faculty actually caring for what I'm trying to do, I don't think I would have honestly finished thesis. Early on, I was having a lot of issues with just hammering home what I really want to do. And if it wasn't for the care of some of the thesis advisors saying, look, you gotta lock it in now, or I don't know if I can mark you as ready. Just being honest enough to tell you, like, I don't think you're ready, but I believe in you. And then after a year, it just completely paying off and seeing that bright smile on a mentor.
Well, and I have to think it's from the faculty perspective, they get a new, not that you aren't all unique and special, but, they go through this process every year with a new group of students. And so they have that long-term understanding that most of you will survive, most of you get through it. You come out with something great. It's a really transformative and difficult crucible-like experience. But, in the end, you'll be forged into something better and shiny and wonderful. But yet at the same time, they can't be dismissive of what that feels like in the short term as you're upset about something or panicking or struggling with something. And so that has to be fun, where they were like, do you remember how you were panicked about that one thing? And really, it was just fine. Like, didn't feel so at the time. So that perspective and self-awareness that comes from this project too is really interesting. Another one of the questions we got, in case we haven't covered it already, is there something that was like your most memorable moment from the thesis process, or something that like just comes to mind every time?
I think the most memorable would be that very first episode. When I started my recording, I rented out a microphone and a stand and everything, and I got myself set up and I did sound check and everything. And I sent Fran one last message saying, hey, I hope we're still up for our call. And Fran shows up, and here my heart sinks. I'm on one-on-one with someone I look up towards, but I was always just so intimidated to say anything to. And just out of the blue, just Fran going, hey, CJ, it's great to see you. And then this era of friendliness, immediately all that word just washed away. And it's for like an hour and a half. It's just a conversation, just a nice conversation between two people. That I think was the most memorable. Just it reminded me that no matter your level in life or your status, you could be a royal in some country, or you could be someone who is considered the lowest of the low. We are all on the same level. You can talk to me and I can talk to you.
Very cool. Anytime I think about it, I honestly think about the culmination, and I think about the giving the presentation to the panel and setting up my exhibit and like picking out how it was going to be designed and everything in that kind of week span. But really the presentation was kind of like, this is it, and now it's over. So it was such a build up to that. But I remember that day was really like the tipping point of like, oh, now I've made it. And now I'm going to finish this and like move on, and being very excited, nervous, but very excited. So that's what I think of when I think of it.
Well, I love that. And I know I've had friends who, defended a thesis for their doctorate or something, and they're all queued up and stuff. And then the minute it's okay, like they open the door and they're like, welcome back, doctor. We'll see you, and they're just at that moment where you're like, oh, I did it, and I'm over. I mean, and then you have to go look cute and get your photos in your cap and gown and finish, the onslaught of family photos or whatever celebrations you have. But what a way to remember that, and just the buildup, and then knowing that the next buildup's coming as you kind of launch and have to get out into the professional world. So the next thing, and we talked about it a little, and just how important mentors were as part of this process, but what kind of support in this did you feel that you needed, and what kind of support did you receive, if we can drill down into that a little bit more?
For support, I think the biggest support I needed was like jumping off. I was able to map everything out and get everything ready and choose candidates and so on and so forth. But it was just that means of how do I start? How do I actually start making and creating and connecting? And this is where not only my mentor, but a number of professors, especially a professor by the name of Kristen Rogers Brown. She helped me find that courage to just say, you know what, we just got to start somewhere. And it's by sending an email to somebody. And since then, it just kind of smooth sailing, just took off. Everything else just followed by.
I feel like I needed support in a lot of ways from like just, friends and family and faculty. And, but the thing that was the most foreign to me during the process was the writing. So the writing portion is, I was making pretty pictures and things and not as much on writing documents anymore. So that was having to kind of get my head around that and really look at past examples and have guidance on like how to set this all up and how to make it work. Was where I felt like I ended up needing some support too, just because it was an uncomfortable spot for me to be in, but helped push me to get it done.
So forgive my ignorance because I come from, where the thesis was only in written format and did not have the creative project-based component. How long was that paper when you did it? Or I out entirely.
I should know. I almost went in my files today to look for it because I'm pretty sure I still have a hard copy of it, but I was busy with work. So it was long. I remember it being long. CJ, how long was yours?
I did bump into mine. I was looking for the presentation I used, and I sort of fumbled over, I think it was like 28 or 27 pages worth of writing. So just bulk, yeah.
Yeah, it was.
And with that, I'm sure the annotated bibliography and research and the other, some might remember more traditional if you came up through a different discipline, kind of a more traditional approach. So you not only had to write a paper and do your research and pull all that together, but then find the time to do a wonderfully creative project as part of that as well.
Yeah, not to mention, majority of the time, I think most thesis students go through this. It's having to either break down a lot or put in a lot more. I know with my thesis, the paper was way longer, and just knowing, I knew it was an issue when I had to look into my calendar and see what was here for Saturday or Sunday. And then just for the entire day, it's just write the paper, full stop. I'm like, okay, yeah, we're back at it.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where you can feel the shadow kind of lurking over you.
Yeah.
So one of our other questions here, and I'll answer at the end, is how folks can participate in Focus Week. So because of the way the pandemic was, unfortunately, CJ's experience was all virtual and there were Zoom sessions. Now that we have a little bit more information, there's a little bit more public health guidance. The Pnca community has been amazing. The vaccination rate is over 99%. We've been very thankful to only have one or two cases. I mean, an incredibly safe, wonderful experience for folks, being safe and stuff. All of the sessions are going to be in person on campus next week. Community members with a limited number. So if you really want to attend something, my email information is in the chat. You can sign up and we can connect you. But for this point in time, there's a limited amount of seats for external community members to come in and enjoy. We will have the galleries available online within a short amount of time after Focus Week. And then there will also be some exhibitions with Hannah Boken and others who've helped us fill up some gallery spaces and stuff for the graduating class. So it's not perfect just yet. We're still kind of in this limbo mode where we want to be very protective of the internal community, and some folks can come if you're vaccinated and have a mask on, but it's not quite as wonderful and chaotic and full for as we would love it to be, but we're hoping for that starting in the fall once we're a little, I feel like, I don't know if other people have experienced this, like we get a little bit, freedom, and then we have to be careful and not have another wave, and then we get a little bit more, and then we have to be careful. But knowing that we only have a few more minutes, is there anything else either of you would like to share about your experience or thoughts that you have for those who are going to be going through it next week?
Yeah, sure. I want to say two things. One for those going into it next week, and one for those who have yet to even start it. If you're going next week, congratulations. You're about to be done. All right. All you have to do is stand on that podium, turn and speak about what you've done. And I'm pretty sure you can talk about it. You've spent a year on it. You're good. All right. Don't worry. For those who have yet to do anything, listen to yourself. And I don't mean listen to your brain or don't listen to logistics. Listen to yourself, whatever you feel in your heart, whatever you feel speaks to you, whatever issues or problems or fantastic ideas that you've had that connects to you on a personal level, even including family and friends. Do it. Try it. I mean, we are artists. We try to create from our minds and from our hearts, but at most times we tend to fall in the mind section of things. So just go ahead and try it. Just try it.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be a mental challenge more than you have the skills and the talent to do it. Now it's the mental task to get it accomplished, but you're going to have incredible growth from going through this and from getting it done, and it's going to be worth it. So just good luck. Very exciting.
Oh, I have to say, it's one of the best things when you get to be on the other side, giving the advice and then knowing that you will not be near a podium, you will not be hanging anything or staying up till 3 a.m., wondering where X, Y, or Z is. Do you have blue tape? Whatever the requirement.
Yeah. I've fought my battles already. It's your turn now.
Such helpful on that. Like, it's you go. It's your time to shine. I'll be over here. But we're really looking forward to next week. And I want to thank you both for sharing your thoughts. Is there anything else that you want to just send out about your current experiences as alumni artists of PNCA before I wrap up? Thank you, and we're all done for the evening.
I have one last thing. Don't lose your connections, whether it be with a professor or classmates. Keep in contact a little bit. It helps sometimes.
That was going to be my recommendation, that you should stay connected to the Alumni Association. It took me longer than it should have to get re-engaged, but I think, again, as we talk a lot about connections in this, and it's kind of all about who you know, I think you have an incredible resource at your fingertips and a group of people who have either been through what you've been through or want to help you succeed in any way. So definitely stay engaged and enjoy.
Well, thank you for making my job so much easier by promoting connections to your fellow alumni and community members. Stacey and CJ, thank you so much for joining us this evening, for sharing your own your own experiences and wonderful fond memories and some of the difficulties that you experienced going through that really transformative process as you transition from being a student creative to a working creative. We really appreciate it, and your support of the community building that we're hoping to continue on with this series and others moving forward. For those of you who are interested, know I'll be following up with an email with the Focus Week schedule and some more details so that hopefully you can connect with this year's batch of slightly panicked but wonderful and talented students. And with that, we just hope that you are staying healthy and well, and that as the weather gets better, you have opportunities to celebrate your own communities and connections and enjoy time with others as safely as possible. And with that, I will wish you all a wonderful evening, and hopefully we will see you in person or on Zoom sometime soon. Take care, everyone, and have a good evening.